Okay, why don't we get going this morning? I wanted to start off by addressing some questions that I wrote down yesterday that I didn't have answers to, and talk about those. One of the things that one of the questions was if you make the value within a child object which does the lookup to a parent. So if you create a validation rule and you say that this field must have a value, the one that's doing the lookup to the parent. The question was then if I make that mandatory and I delete the parent, will that, if I attempt to delete the parent now, will that prevent that from occurring? So something similar to what we were doing with the master detail relationship in our roll-up summaries, but here what we're doing is it's with a lookup relationship. Okay, so let me try and repeat that. So what I did was I made, in fact I'll just show you. How about that? On the way I tested this was on the job application, which does a lookup to the candidate. I created a validation rule which was candidate required, and candidate required said if the length of that field is 0, then do not allow the save to occur. So in performing the test, what I found was that if I blanked out this field from the job application, it would not allow me to save it. If I deleted the parent record, the candidate, it would delete it. It would not trigger a event on the child to then execute the validation rule. Okay, so that's one of the things about being loosely coupled versus tightly coupled. So our lookups versus our master detail relationships. The lookups do not have that connection between, for instance, deleting the parent then triggers a write event on the child. Okay.
What was the value in there after you deleted the parent?
It was simply empty.
It was empty.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly do a demo here. So here is, let's see, here's my, let's go for George Schnell. So here's my software engineer, it's app0002. So if I go into app002 and why don't I edit this? And I'm going to blank it out, and then I'm going to click on save. So then my validation rule triggers. So I can't do it from there. So the write event did occur on my job application. So now if I go to my list of candidates, and here's George Schnell, I'm going to delete George. That's okay. And then if I go back, here's app002. And it simply does not have a candidate associated with it. So if I click on the record, the candidate field is blank.
You said this is for the lookup relationship?
Yeah, this is for the lookup.
So what happens in the master detail relationship?
Let me test that one. I believe it will prevent it.
Yeah, unless there's cascading delete, in that case it probably will delete.
Oh, yeah. So let's just think this through. Very good, Lyra. So if I deleted the candidate, that would perform a cascading delete, and the job application would have been deleted. So that's what would have happened there. Yeah. Another question that was brought up, can you do a delete and simply reference an external ID? And so I researched this one, and what the docs say is that the only ID that you can reference when doing the delete is a Salesforce ID. Okay. So you're going to need to first query the database in order to get the Salesforce IDs. Then you would perform the delete.
That makes sense because the record ID is the primary primary key. The external ID is not. It's just a.
Yeah.
It's just index, not a.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it seems like maybe someday we could, because we do have an index, so it could look it up. But currently, it does not do that. It does not support that. So, Mauricio asked me about a Spanish user guide. So here we go.
Español. ¿Cómo advertir el accidente?
Can you translate that for us?
How to succeed on Salesforce.
How to succeed with Salesforce.
How to
All right.
success. Yeah.
So,
Salesforce for Dummies.
and this is, what's that? Salesforce Dummies? There actually is a Salesforce for Dummies book. I'm not making that up. There's a Salesforce for Dummies book. So, yeah, it's not a joke. So, and then there was a question about the import wizard. Does it auto match? And so what I did last night was I went through the auto wizard again. And it does not, it does an auto match, but it's a very, very rudimentary auto match where the column name must be exactly what the label of the field is.
So not even the field name. But
Not the API name, but the label. So in my case, I went through with a position in order to import a position, and it only auto matched on 2 of them, because only owner and one other one actually had the exact same, or the column name was the same as the API name. In addition, I also found out it does support upsert with relationships, utilizing external IDs. It doesn't call it upsert. It just says, would you like to both create and update if we find them, so. It does support that, so that is not just a feature of the Web Services API and the data loader. It's also a part of the wizard. Okay. Well. All right. So our next topic this morning is going to be visualforce, our visualforce component library. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through a lot of different tags that are in the library, and we're going to work on some exercises where we build up some pages and we use all of the different, or not all of them, but a lot of the different tags, the standard tags which are available to you. Now here are we've categorized them in sort of our own way of categorizing them. So we're going to talk about layout, course metadata components. You've actually already used a couple of those. Iteration, input and output, static resources. Talk about some non-visual components, some AJAX, some custom components. So there's a whole slew of different components. Remember that there's about 70 tags within the library. So we're not going to cover all of them, but we're going to go through a bunch of them to talk about what they do. All right. Layout components. I like to describe layout components as being the skeleton of a page that is replicating the Salesforce look and feel. Okay. And yesterday we worked with some of the layout components. So for instance, a page block section. These aren't defining the content, but they're defining the structure of the content and where we're able to place things and how we're able to categorize things. So when we're talking about layout components, that's really what we're talking about. Here is a page within Salesforce. There's a number of options you can do, like the ability to remove. There are attributes associated with removing, for instance, the tabs across the Salesforce banner across the top, or not banner, but header, and then the sidebar, stuff like that. Your pages will be contained within an opening and closing page tag. Some of the other attributes, you have the standard controller and the controller. Standard controller is the name of the object. That's the one that's built for you. Controller is the name of your Apex class. Title, what to display across the title bar of the web browser. Tab style, you can reference another style associated with an object. Sidebar, turn it off. This action, this is where we can do some action binding for the page. So remember yesterday I was talking about how from a page layout, you cannot directly call a a custom component, let me rephrase that. From a page layout, you cannot call a custom controller. Now, with a page layout that has a custom button to a visualforce page that in the page tag has an action attribute, upon requesting that visualforce page, it will immediately request the method in the controller. So it'll immediately forward that request up to the controller and then forward the user onto some location, like for instance, the current page that they are on or a different page. So you can, even though you can't directly do that call, you can by creating a page that simply forwards the user to make the request, it will essentially implement that logic.
But only with a custom button.
Or you can create a custom link. You need some mechanism whereby the user is able to request that visualforce page.
So you can override an existing button, though.
You could, yeah. So yeah, you could do something, you're right, you could override an existing link so that upon a user viewing a record, it calls the page that immediately forwards the request up to the controller to do something and forward the user to somewhere else or something like that. So yeah. Render as, currently it supports PDF. It gives you the ability to generate PDF documents. There's actually there's another out on developer.force.com. Someone wrote some code as a part of a wiki or blog post where what they do is they use via Apex, they're able to generate a PDF and then save it in our database as an attachment. So think about putting on a visualforce page an attach PDF button or attach offer. So in our case, we clicked on a button in exercise 2-1 in order to view that PDF. Well, we could save it to our local hard drive, and then we could then upload it as an attachment to a record, like our offer record, or we could actually automate that whole process by creating an attach PDF button. And what that would do is that utilizing this, basically you would render the page as a PDF, and then you would obtain a reference. It's actually called a page reference, and then you'd take the contents of that and then store it in the database as a binary attachment. So you could do something like that. So there's a lot of, once again, just another sort of pitch for developer.force.com. There's a lot of code out there, code snippets that people have put out there for you to utilize. Page blocks. A page block is, in this case, candidate edit is the page block. It is that sort of the outer block, and then each of those small sections, the information, address information, employment information, each of these are page block sections. So they're recreating that Salesforce look and feel structure. There's a section at the top there called page block buttons. This is where you would normally put your command buttons and your command links. So that's the reason that that we have that tag, is to identify the area in which we'd put those. There's also a page block section item. A page block section item represents a cell in your page block section. And what this does is it gives you the ability, we'll come back to this, it gives you the ability to create alternative web controls. So if you don't want to take the default that Salesforce gives you for instance, a pick list. Let's say there's a pick list, and the pick list is a number between 1 and 5. We're going to do an exercise where instead of doing a pick list, let's do a set of radio buttons. Well, to do that alternative web control, we're going to create a page block section and then place the label and the set of radio buttons in that section item. Okay. There's also a section header in this case, so we can draw that section header. It has a title and a subtitle. So going through some of the attributes on these, the page block, yeah, we use that tab style. It can also, we also use the title yesterday. So to display, in that case, in the previous slide, it was candidate edit. Tab styles, you reference an object, and it utilizes the tab style that is being referenced or associated with that object. Page block buttons, an area of the page block in which we can display buttons. We would then place as child tags inside of there command buttons and command links. Section header, it has a title and a subtitle. And we could do some data binding, for instance, display the record ID like we're doing here. Or I'm sorry, not the record ID, the record name. So C0001. Page block section is that subsection. One of the nice things about page block sections is that they are collapsible. If you'll see that, you'll see in Salesforce a little right arrow, and a user can click on that and collapse it to free up some real estate on their page. Columns, this defaults to 2, but as we did yesterday with our hello world, we could also set columns equal to 3. So it's for people who want to do something like that. It's not something you can do in page layouts, but it is something you can do in visualforce pages. You can also do 4 or 5 and do it to the point where it becomes, you know, very ugly. Now, a page block section item is only when you're not doing input fields or output fields. So those automatically take care of sort of the cell, you know, fitting in within cells. But if you're doing those alternative controls, then you would place them within a page block section item. Okay, so like I said, we'll come back to that. A page block section item can have 2 child elements within it. Typically those 2 child elements are a label and then the web control that you would like to utilize, something like a select radio. Okay. As I mentioned previously, you can include visualforce pages in other visualforce pages. And the way you can do that is through the include tag. There's also the ability to do iframes, so if you want to reference a URL like some intranet application that you have, you can do an iframe. And then an S control is it's our that deprecated feature for doing custom pages. Other types of components you can do. Toolbars. Toolbars are you know, as we're showing here with the screenshot, there are toolbar groups that are within those. The tab panels are kind of cool. Tab panels are another way to organize your data. All of these kind of, you know, these are just alternative ways of sort of organizing different sections. Tab panels are pretty cool because somebody put a post out on developer.force.com, which is tabbed accounts in less than 30 seconds, which what they were able to do was to simply, instead of having related lists of all the things associated with an account, instead have a bunch of tabs for those related lists. So you click, so once you go into the account tab, then on that page there's a set of tabs, one for the account details, the next one for the related contacts, the next one for open activities, whatever it may be. And so it gives you the ability to create a different alternative UI as opposed to the standard related list structure. Okay. Yes?
So again, all these layout items fall within that lower right-hand window. They don't override the whole window.
No, they don't. Yeah, they don't.
So the tabs would be sub-tab on menu.
Yeah. So what doesn't exist is, you know, all of this is kind of, what doesn't exist is There's not visualforce components for recreating the sidebar or the the standard header that Salesforce provides. All of this is referring to the body area, I guess you could call it, whether it be a single record or a list of records. That being said, like I said, with the page, you can get rid of the Salesforce header and you can get rid of the sidebar so that, for instance, we were looking at that Apereo screenshot. No way you could tell that it was even a Salesforce app. It completely got rid of all the Salesforce stuff. So, okay. But good point, yeah. Panel bars and panel bar items are the sort of collapsible sections in which you click on it to expand or collapse. And then panel grid is a grid where you could have multiple rows and columns of different things. Let's jump into exercise 3-1 and talk about and do this exercise. And the reason is that I'm going to talk about templates right as soon as we're done with this, and then our next exercise will be on templates. So I'd rather put that off until we get to that exercise. So exercise 3-1, what are we going to do there? Well, what we're going to do is, this one's pretty straightforward. We're going to create a visualforce page in which we recreate the structure, so those layout components associated with our visualforce page. So taking a look here, you're going to be doing things like creating page blocks, page block sections, page block section items, in order to recreate that structure, which is our position page. Okay. One of the things that people often ask is, is there a way for me, so here, if we're recreating a position page from scratch, is there a way for me to have it generate that? The answer is that there's not sort of a wizard that will generate it for you within the tool, or some sort of thing that converts page layouts to visualforce page markup. That being said, on the App Exchange, there is a application, and it's called, I believe it's called Easy Page, and it's let's see here, App Exchange. And then what this does is it generates visualforce pages. So it's a paid application, but it's $10 a month, so it's not like, it's,
It will just generate it based off of...
What it does is a page layout. So it's a converter from a page layout into a visualforce page. So now it's like I said, it's out on the App Exchange. It's a paid application, but there are things out there for you to utilize, which Easy Page. So, okay. So the question that was just brought up was how would you get at the metadata, and it's what you need to do. So if you wanted to download these files so that they're available later, what you would do is the easiest way to sort of do it is through the force.com ID. When you create a project in the force.com ID, it downloads the metadata associated with your org. Okay, so in this case, if we just created a new project, we would have the ability. I'm just going to go to the part where I can show you where you can select. So, oops, properties. So when you create a project in the force.com IDE, what you can do is you can identify that you want to add and remove components. So the short answer is that you install the force.com IDE. you connect up to your org using the credentials that you have, and then you include in the project all of the metadata components. That will download all of the XML files, which are your metadata, to your local hard drive. And then you could, for instance, deploy them to another location.
So it would give us all the page layouts.
It give you all the page
Everything.
layouts. So taking a look here. So see all this stuff here. So it applications, Apex classes, visualforce components, dashboards, documents, so on and so forth. Okay. So a lot
Then
of
you
stuff.
upload it into another.
Then you could then deploy it
To-
to another org. Yeah, yeah. Now, if you had a sandbox, for instance, or a developer edition org, you could then deploy it to there. So, well. Okay. So it's pretty well documented out there on developer.force.com. Click on tools and then force.com IDE, and then they have some instructions for how you would create a new project and all that.
Okay. You have to do it through the IDE though.
There's also other tools. There's a tool called the force.com migration tool, which is another tool available to download from developer.force.com. And then we have a partner called Dream Factory who created a cool tool called Snapshot. But that's a tool available from the App Exchange that costs money. More than $10 a month from what I've heard. A few more zeros. All right. So let's see here. Let's talk about our. So one thing that I skipped over were templates, and so I want to take a moment to talk about templates. So templates in Salesforce give you the ability to pull in. Let me try and. It's like an include in the sense that one visualforce page is pulling in content from another visualforce page, okay? But it's more intelligent, and the reason it's more intelligent is that with templates, you're able to not just pull in sort of content from another, static content from another page, but you could pass, much in the same way that if you're calling a function or a method, you could pass some data to it before it returns something to you. Well, in the case of a template, that's what you can do, is you can pass some information to it, okay? So let me explain to you sort of the classic use case for templates, or one of the classic use cases for templates. Let's say that you're creating a custom application, and in that custom application, you have the same header and footer appearing on multiple pages, okay? Now, one of the things that you could do is you might do something like go, okay, I'm gonna have a page body, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use an Apex include tag to include my default header and my default footer so that I don't have to continually recreate it and I can simply reference one copy, and that's fine. But let's say that that header is contextual to the page. So in other words, if we are, let's say we're creating a visualforce page, and let's say that that header in your style displays, let's say that it's for a corporate homepage. And so the header, if the user clicks on about this company, the header style is the same, but it has about as the actual title. And if the user went to the homepage and they clicked on careers, once again, the header style is the same, but now it says careers. Well, it would be nice to be able to pass about or careers or products to that include so that it could dynamically render in the same style, but dynamically render whatever, title you want for that page. And so that's what templates allow us to do, is it allows us to not just include something from some other location, but to think about, sort of passing it a variable over there, whereby it renders whatever we pass to it, like for instance, whatever the title may be for that header. Okay? All right, so a number of things go into a template. Well, first of all, there are two sets of tags depending upon whether you're requesting the target page or the template page. There's two pages that if we take our most basic example of using templates, there are two pages. The target page is the one that the user requests or that you link to. So think of this as the page that the user is really going to. There's the template page, which is the one that we're going to basically insert into the target page. And we're going to, that's going to be the one that's being included, or that's going to be the one that contains that header, for instance, or whatever it may be. Okay? In the target page, the original page that the user requests, you would have a composition tag. And the composition tag is the mechanism by which we reference the template page. Okay, so this is the one that's going to include the template page. Now also, in the target page, you're going to utilize the define tag. So we're going to define the title to be contextual. Let's define, in one case, the title is about. In another case, the title is careers. In another case, the title is products, whatever it may be. So we're going to use the define to define that variable. Now over on the template page, that's where we have our header information. So all our markup, it's all everything we need to build up that header. Then in there, we have an insert tag. The insert tag, the purpose of the insert tag is to then insert whatever was passed to us. So display our standard header, but then insert about or careers or products or what have you. Okay? So let's take a look at a very simple example of the way that this works. So at the top, the first 6 lines are the template page. The bottom 6 lines are the target page. So notice that the target page has the composition tag, and that is referencing the my template page, which is above. In this case, it's defining the client name, and here we've just hard-coded it to be Mr. Trevor Graydon. Okay? And we're essentially, think of us as almost like when we're calling a function, we're passing it an argument. Okay, we're passing it some data. Now our template up above is going to receive, in this case, it's going to receive Mr. Trevor Graydon, and it's going to insert that where the insert is defined. So it says output text, I would like to thank you, and then here we have insert the client name, and then comma for being a loyal customer. So the output of these pages, and they are very simplistic, but that's kind of our point here. The output would be, I would like to thank you, comma, Mr. Trevor Graydon for being a loyal customer. Okay. So if you can kind of imagine, instead of hard coding in Mr. Trevor Graydon, we'd have some data binding maybe that's pulling in the customer name, or for that matter, it's a little bit silly that we just have some output text, but we'd be doing something more reusable like a header or something like that. Okay. Any questions about templates?
Do you use it for email?
Yeah. So one of the things that we have in Salesforce support is you can create email templates as visualforce, or use visualforce to create email templates. And then do something, yeah. So then have a composition tag in your email template that's utilizing visualforce and include that. So, yeah.
Are there any limitations to what your templates have to have in terms of a structure? I mean, you have to have page at the minimum? And the rest.
Yeah, the weird thing is that you do have to have a page, although the page in the template is yeah, it's just, it seems to me that it's simply discarded. I think, I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes, but it's not like, you can't have, it in a single visualforce page, you cannot have a page within a page in terms of, you know, multiple page tags. This seems to be smart enough to strip out the page tag in the template before it inserts it. But anytime, the problem is, I guess, they ran into, or the reason you have to do that is that it requires at least one page. So
that's the minimum structure you have to have.
Yeah.
And everything else can be anywhere in the page.
Yeah,
The other well-formed Apex stuff.
So it would make more sense if your templates didn't have to have page tags, but they do, just because I would imagine the parser requires it. So yeah. So.
And you just store the templates as a page.
Yes. So the template is a separate visualforce page. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was wondering if all the templates live in the same.
They do, the same area. They're simply, templates are simply other visualforce pages. So there's nothing, yeah.
For every template, you're going to have a page? Or you have a single page with all the templates that you...
No. So the template is a page. So this top one up here, so the first one, my template, that is a visualforce page. The second one, which is the target page, that's a visualforce page. Okay, so they're both visualforce pages. There's no special classification that we have for templates or anything like that. So templates are simply visualforce pages.
And you grade it the same way, right?
Yes. Yep.
They don't have to be stored in the same org to have scope.
And all your visualforce pages are stored in the same location. There's no segmenting of placing visualforce pages in different folders or something like that. So.
Question.
Yes, go ahead.
So does your template has to be a visualforce page, or can it be one of the?
It must be. So a template must be a visualforce page. So yeah.
And you have one visualforce page for each template that you create.
Yeah. So for instance, the composition tag has that attribute template equals. That must be set equal to a visualforce page. So, okay.
Can you have multiple composition?
You can have multiple composition tags. So we could definitely do something like, let's include our header, let's have some markup, and let's now include our footer, something like that. So you can do multiple, yeah, you can do multiple things, yeah, include multiple templates. Yes.
And for every define, there will be an insert. So if I have multiple parameters, can it be?
You can have, yeah, multiple defines and multiple inserts.
So it has to go one to one, and it has to go in that order?
I don't know if it has to go in the order. I doubt it. I haven't tried that. Yeah, in the lab exercise, when you're doing it, we'll work on these. Give it a try. I mean, I doubt it because they're named. So I would think the order doesn't matter, but I haven't tested that out.
So it looks like you're basically defining a variable there. So
yeah.
Is text the only type?
No. Like what's the type of?
Let's say you want to, for some reason, a number or a dollar currency, which is a rational number. So.
Oh, so the define can contain things other than text. So you could define some markup that you want to pass over to the page that would then insert that markup. So in our case, we simply have some text, but we could put some other tags inside of our define.
And could that client name, instead of being, well, I guess when you call it, you could make that, instead of Mr. Trevor Graydon, you could have put a position ID thing.
Definitely, yeah. So this is overly
Really great
simplistic.
thing.
Yeah. So you definitely want to do something like data binding. So whatever the contact name is. So contact dot name. You know, let's insert that. Okay. All right. All right. So we'll come back to that because it's one of our labs, and we'll continue to talk about that. All right, course metadata components. There's a number of tags which generate not just, you know, the bones or the skeleton or actually the content, which we'll talk about in a second, but they'll do both the structure and the content. So the classic one that we've used already is the detail. It not only creates the fields, it also creates the sections. It recreates the page layout structure within your page. We also utilized a related list that displayed a related list of particular items. So the great thing about these is that they're quick. The drawback is that they're not as flexible, not nearly as flexible, because for instance, when you're displaying a detail, it displays the page layout. There's a few things you can change about it, but you can turn off your hover list, you can turn off the related list, but after that, you know, you're displaying a page layout. If you want to control which sections are displayed, then do some page blocks and specify which page block sections you want. Okay. The detail, like I said, so here it is. One of the cool things we can do with the detail is there's a subject attribute. We could set that equal to one of our 15-digit IDs, and then dynamically set what, you know, which record we would want to display for that detail. Related list equals the related list. It refers to, you know, one of our related lists in one of our one of the child relationships. So in our case, we did job underscore applications double underscore R. So from the parent, we can then include related lists. There's also list views and also enhanced lists. List views and enhanced list are for displaying when we have multiple records to display one of those, the default. These are two different views into a list of records, and these will display these. Okay, so it allows the user to do things like create their own views and filter. So a lot of flexibility. The enhanced list it's just different. It's more like almost a spreadsheet type view in the sense that it outlines the cells, and it's a little bit more, the user can then drag the cell length kind of thing. So it's a little bit more, it's just a different list view of a list of records. So the list views and the enhanced list would typically be used if you wanted to, for instance, replace when a user clicks on the tab. Instead of you know, displaying the default view, let's control that. Maybe we want to put some other stuff on that page when the user clicks on the tab. Okay. So visualforce pages not only override a single record, but also multiple records. Okay. Question?
Is that the only way that you can? Is that the only way you can control that view? I think of it as the search page, that list when we come in, because with the page layouts, they really pertain solely toward the detail and the edit. In terms of, you know, creating the look and feel of that view. Yeah.
No, you could use enhanced list or list views, but you could also create, we'll talk about iteration components, we'll talk about tables. So you could create what will ultimately be an HTML table of items and then do stuff.
I guess I meant declaratively, is there anything you can do to modify that list view?
Declaratively, you mean, I'm not sure I understand. So you want, like, from the setup menu to be able to...
When I click on that tab and I come to that page where you click go,
yeah.
If I wanted to change anything about that page.
Oh, I know what you're, okay, I'm sorry. I know what you're talking about. All right, so when a user clicks on a tab, So when a user clicks on, for instance, positions, can I customize this?
Yeah, because that's the first page they see before we go
Yeah,
into the details.
yeah. So can I customize this?
Right.
Okay, I understand. I understand. So yes, you can. And what we would do is they're called search layouts. And under Create Objects, you can customize that by going under here. So in addition to page layouts, there are these search layouts. So how to display search results when you're doing a lookup dialog. So when you click on that lookup icon, what columns do you want to display? So what you were referring to was the position list view. So there's a couple of things we can do here. So there's the default when you go to the positions tab, and then when you say show me a list, there's that view. You could go in here and say, okay, when I click on that, I now want to display let's say the status. Okay, so now the status is that last column, so that if I go up here and click on this, notice that I now have a status column available. Okay.
And that's what what we were just looking at, that enhanced list, we can modify this, making.
Yeah, now when you're using the list view, then you're also ceding some control to your end user, because notice there's things like recently viewed, recently created, recently modified. In addition, you're giving with a list view, you give your users the ability to customize their views. So, okay.
There was an option to overwrite the page, the detailed page, but there's no option to overwrite the search pages or list view.
Yeah, there is. There is. So it's not necessarily overwriting. We're creating a new tab. So when we create a tab, so I could create not under custom object tabs, but create a visualforce tab. So I actually already have one. I forgot to mention that. So I have a visualforce tab, which is actually unrelated to any particular object. But I use this for the purpose of training, which is anytime I want to demo something, I simply go here and there's a bunch of output links. This is simply a visualforce page with links to other visualforce pages. So, okay.
So how did you add Launchpad? Did you use
Simply go to Setup, and then click on Tabs. Create a new visualforce tab.
Oh, so they have a separate category.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not overriding a custom object tab. What you're doing is if you want to replace the positions tab with a visualforce page, create a visualforce tab. You don't override the custom object tab. Okay. All right. Okay. All righty. So keeping on. All right. So in this exercise, you're going to create utilize some templates. This is a slide of. I actually created this slide, and sometimes it's kind of complicated, so it sometimes tends to befuddle people more than it explains. But there's the target page, which is on the left-hand side, and there's the template page, which is on the right-hand side. Okay? The target page is the one that your user would request, and that contains the composition tag. And notice that the template attribute is set equal to the name of the page over on the right-hand side. Okay? We're going to pass a bunch of stuff over to the template tag, and then we're going to ultimately return it back to the target page. Okay. So it's a little bit it's kind of complex because we're passing something over, but then it's being inserted back in the original page. So I think that kind of throws people for a loop. Down at the bottom is an example of an insert, or an include. An include is pretty straightforward. You just reference a visualforce page and it just includes it. It's less flexible though, because you can't pass content over to it or variables over to it. Okay?
It's just pretty static variable, static information.
Static, yeah. I mean, you can still do things like data binding, but it's just including it in. It's just
Versus
inserting.
this one making a call with some data, and then I'm sending you this parameter, and then you're going to take this parameter, create something, and send it back to me.
Yes.
And I'm going to include it.
Yes.
Okay.
For more information on Salesforce.com training and certification, please visit www.salesforce.com/training.